I like to consider it in my head, it's like I built the Eiffel Tower, but just out of little bricks of turd, just like shit bricks. Within 2 hours, it was the #1 post on Reddit, and I made £20,000 in like 2 hours.
This is a conversation with Huw Millward, the creator of the entirely text-based game Warsim.
I didn't make any backups of it, and the source code got wiped. I got really, really drunk, and I missed all of my investor meetings.
Despite the complete lack of graphics, Warsim is strangely successful with a cult following.
Those spikes were making me more money than my job was per year. So I was like, oh shit, okay. Fuck the job. Realistically, mate, it's there's no one marketing tool or solution that I found is like the one. But what worked for me, especially back in the day when I was really, really hot on the marketing, was a tapestry of everything.
I invited Huw because I had a suspicion he would challenge my beliefs about how to make successful indie games. And he indeed helped expand my horizon, and I hope he'll do the same for yours. Why do you think it did so well? It's not a game you would expect to do so well. What's your theory behind it?
It's difficult. It's hard to say, really, isn't it? Because it's like I could make guesses. I think obviously it didn't do really well when I first released it, and I just kept updating it. I learned how marketing worked, and then I was obviously trying everything I could to get attention on it. But also the people that did come and play it and talked about it, I took their feedback, and I was like, right, okay, that's a really good idea. I add it in the game, and then I put their name next to the change, and these people become super fans, and then obviously they stay, and it just built really strong that way, by listening to the community, but also marketing, drawing new people in. And then I noticed after a while, it just snowballs, like people just know the game now, weirdly, and it's just kind of a thing. So I don't have to sell it anymore, It sells. But like for years, it was obviously a very fucking strange game. Why would anyone play it?
When it first came out, it was not that successful? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, for sure. 2017, it was the original early access release. And I think I made like $100 or $200 or something, which I thought, oh, this is amazing. For like the first year and a half, it wasn't very good. It was like I'd make maybe a couple of dollars a week. I thought that was cool. I was working a full-time job. And then 2018, I was like, I'm going to take this seriously now. And I started trying to do more stuff and marketing, things like that. And I'd notice, you probably know the same with your games, right? Steam, you see a massive spike from sales. Like, someone writes an article, boom, big spike. Someone, I don't know, does a big YouTube video on it. There's a big shoot at spike. And, with a summer sale, right, or a winter sale, there's another big spike. And those spikes were making me more money than my job was per year. So I was like, oh shit, okay. Fuck the job. Let's get in on this. 2019, COVID hit. We went all in. And then, it just got bigger and better. And every year then it started doubling. And obviously I would learn more things and expand. But at this point, we're talking a game that's been in development for 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, and now it's 10. So, there's a lot of stuff in this game that if someone tried to make something similar, it would take them a long ass time to make something that weird and that featureful, I guess.
Interesting. Yeah, the main reason I wanted to invite you is because I kind of had a feeling that your perspective to game dev is probably very different to all of the common advice and to all the most other game dev stories I hear. Because usually what happens when somebody releases a game and it doesn't do well is they just start a new game. But what you did is for some reason, you kept working on the game, even though it sold like only a couple of copies. Like, how comes? Why did you do that?
I was never doing it for money in the first place. It was always fun. So it's like I didn't need to make money. I was just, this is cool. Wow, one person cares. That's amazing. Anyway, I was just making something for myself to play. And then after a while, if I didn't really bother with it anymore, it didn't bother me. But then I'd get people messaging like, hey, I really want to see this in the game. And I go, yeah, go on then, I'll add that. And it's more just for me, really. And then after a while, the fans, the community were there and they were really lovely people. And I felt kind of indebted at that point. Like, well, I promised these people a full game. So it didn't come out of early access till 2022, I think, which was like, 5 years from releasing in early access to coming out, because I just kept adding whatever I wanted rather than what I needed to add to get the game technically complete. But yeah, I don't know, just had fun with it, really. Most games, if someone spent more time on them, would, do the same, Like you can release a game that goes amazingly on day one, and that's great. And you can release a game that does terribly on day one, and you can abandon it. But if you carry that on and you listen to people, and you make it better and extend and try whatever, you've already got a game, right? So you may as well make it better, may as well make it cooler. I mean, people are going to want to buy a game that's had more work put into it. It makes sense to me. But it's just that obviously if you've got a team, you've got wages to pay and stuff, it's a different ball game, isn't it? It's a different world. I guess for me, I was in my early 20s working a shit job, doing whatever I wanted, really. And it didn't matter to me whether this game sold or not. So I had that fortune.
Do you maybe want to go through the development of the Warsim from start to finish? So I think your initial idea was also just to make this like a little fun project to learn C++ or something like that, right?
Yeah. So I couldn't program very well, and I was learning a few tutorials, and I started making like procedural generation systems. And this was my favorite shit ever. I love Proc-gen so much. And I made like a Proc-gen weapon creator that made like 2 billion weapons or something. And I was like, this is awesome. But it's useless. It's not in a game. No one cares about it. I really want it to be in a video game. And I was thinking, I wonder if I can get some other video games to take my tools. And after a while, I was like, nah, I've got to build the game myself. So I started trying to work on some little stuff. And I have ADHD. So I think what happened was I made this tutorial game, which was just one enemy versus another enemy and they kill each other. And I was like, right, cool. What if I added a menu? Cool. Okay. An arena. Oh, okay. What about recruitment? What about this? Oh, a throne room, right? What about the ability to explore the world? And I just kept adding and adding and adding and adding. And it sort of got out of control. And then I put it online and, it took off. But yeah, it was never intended to be a game, really. It was a tutorial. And actually, I abandoned Warsim after it was the tutorial and started working on a different game project, which I would consider my first true game, which was called The Wastes, which was made because I really wanted to play Fallout 4, but it wasn't coming out yet. And I was like, all right, I'll make myself a little ASCII wasteland game, and that'll scratch the itch on my skin, I worked on it for 6 months. Community built up. I had like quite a lot of fans. People send me money, and I was like, oh my God, I've done it. Like, I've made a game and I have a community. And I didn't make any backups of it, and the source code got wiped. So 6 months in, it's gone. And I was very depressed about that. And I was like, shit.
That's not Warsim. That's the other game that you worked on.
Exactly. So that gets lost. And I was like, what am I going to do now? So I looked at my old projects and was like, screw it. I'll pick up this little Warsim project. And, maybe I can feel better by adding some little things to this. And it took months for Warsim to build to the point where this game was community-wise. But it started growing. And then, yeah, I guess we had some early fans. I had people send me money. I submitted the game to Steam. And we had a little bump and then not much. And I think for a while, when there wasn't any fan comments or any community stuff, I didn't really feel as inspired to work on the game. But we got a regular supply of people commenting, and it made me think, like, you know what, hell yeah, like, this is where it's at. And then, yeah, I just locked in. And for the most part, I was working on it quite hard. I went traveling for a while, and when I came back, people were searching in the obituaries in my town to see if I died. So I came back and was like, I released an update called Warsim's Not Dead. Said, hey, it's okay, we're still here. And then locked in properly. And that was when it officially really felt like a job. And then it started paying like a job. And yeah, just kept going. And I added so much weird stuff. Like, if anybody's curious about it, I would advise them to scroll through the changelogs on Steam, and you will take probably like half an hour to scroll through them all, because at one point, every day I was updating with like a 30 feature update. It was insane. Maybe that was too addicted, but I was very addicted to the process of development, to having a community, having fans. So I would do, as much stuff as I can. Right, let's create this. And all day I would just be programming, releasing. And obviously, you make games that aren't text-based. So you have to do a lot more work. Whereas if I was adding something, like I can add things in Warsim that are really simple. And the coding is, not simple, but there are things that can be done really simply that if it was a graphical game would take more work. So I was able to add a lot of features quite easily and make this quite complicated, but without having to do a lot of the complicated, shaders and graphics and models and you name it, all that stuff. So I think that allowed me to work faster, and I was just pumping updates out, absolutely obsessed. And yeah, it just kept going. And then 9 years in, I released a collector's edition. So it probably looks pixelated to you through the webcam, but we got physical release, and I was shipping them all over the world. I think that's how we started talking, wasn't it? I was going to send one to you. And yeah, that's amazing. They've gone to most countries. And yeah, I'm a game dev now. It's crazy. Professional.
Especially like that point of, in a text-based game, you can add content incredibly quickly. Like there's the saying, I'm not sure where it's from, but it goes something like, be cheap so you can be generous. And I think text-based games are like the ultimate form of this, right? Like, content is so cheap to make that you can be extremely generous with the amount of content that you give to players.
Yeah, that's a really good quote, actually. Damn.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I'm I don't know where it's from. Like
It's a good
some
quote,
of
though.
my game dev friends brought it up once, and it kind of stuck with me. But we don't really know where it came from.
Yeah, now the Proc-gen stuff as well. You're right. It's that is another big driver, and I think Proc-gen systems are sometimes done really badly. Starfield, where it's like really shit Proc-gen. Where it's like, oh, it's Proc-gen, but it's really just noise that just places stuff around, and it doesn't have any rhyme or reason behind it, any structure. And I think there's about 40, 50 Proc-gen systems in Warsim, and some of them are really shallow. They're not the best. They just make a little bit of content here and there, like random books, random fucking newspapers or whatever. But there are some that are really complex, like, for example, the random race generator, which I think has 94 million different races it can produce. Some of them aren't that special, but some of them are insane and very unique. And I see stuff every game. I'm like, I've never seen this before. I don't even know what this will do. And I remember one time, I think there are maybe 500 different effects that can apply to different things. And you end up with so many weird combinations of actual functional differences in the way that they play that I had a kingdom of like, I think they were like death-eating goblins or something, which goblins, they have a larger population than most races. And death-eating means that the more they kill, the stronger they become, like quite dramatically. And so because they had such a large population, there was a lot more fighting, which meant that they grew so fast. And I didn't really notice this. And then it got to late game, and I went to fight them. And when I looked, the average goblin in this kingdom had the strength of 1,000 men. And I was like, oh, I might not be able to defeat this. This might actually be too impossible to defeat. And I thought I created a monster. It took a lot of fighting, and I think I just managed to get there before the window closed, before they got so strong that they were unbeatable. And years later, a player took advantage of this and managed to make like basically an infinitely powerful champion out of a kingdom that he'd conquered who had this trait. And he made them like really strong, but his servant. And was essentially just sending this one-man army to every other kingdom in the game and just wiping them out. And he killed like 1,000 kingdoms with it, and just absolutely insane. And I never thought about that. I never thought it was something you could even do. But players find a way, which is beautiful, absolutely beautiful.
I guess that's the advantage of building so many complex interlocking systems with procedural generation and so on, is that there's a lot of emergent complexity also that you didn't even plan for. I definitely felt that when playing, like I only scratched the surface. It definitely felt like I was scratching the surface. I was kind of looking at all of my options and being like, oh, I can change the policies of my kingdom. I can hire all of these different staff. I can explore. I can do stuff with the arena. And then whenever I find something new, like another bucket of options opens up. Like I go explore, I find another building like the mine, and then all of a sudden I can either buy the mine or I can raid the mine or whatever, or I can try to negotiate with that mine. It's like, what the hell, man? Like I was already blown away by my options just looking at the basic menu screen, and then it just keeps going and it keeps presenting new and new new things.
There's a lot more than that as well.
Like,
there's always another menu. It is this bad, right? Even I sometimes, when I've played it, I find stuff and I'm like, what is this? And for a second, I'm like, did it go sentient and code something that I missed? Like, what is this? Oh, I added this 8 years ago. Right. Okay, there we go. I see weird stuff like that quite often. Or like a player will talk about something and be like, hey, what about this screen? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And then I go in, oh yeah, shit, I must have added this like 9 years ago or 7 years ago. It's a very strange one.
But going back to the development history, so the entire game grew essentially out of a smaller game. So it almost sounded like you were saying the arena part of the game was first, and then you added the throne room later. What was first? What was the game?
So originally it was a simple like war simulator. So it wasn't really arena. It was more like two small armies. You could put in a number like 100 skeletons versus 100 goblins or something, and it would simulate them fighting each other, and like would display their deaths, kind of like how Mount and Blade displays the deaths of the units and stuff like that. And that was kind of basic. So after that, I started adding other stuff. And I think the arena came not long afterwards, and then I was like, "Oh, this is fun! Like there's some real juicy stuff that we can do here." And then I added like laws and options and other kingdoms, and started adding Proc-gen. And it was actually weird. It was probably like 3-4 years into development that I added the throne room. It was not an intentional feature at all. I played an indie game called Sort the Court, and now you've got reigns as well, which is similar to the way it works. But this was before that. And I thought, you know what, this is a really interesting concept, actually. So I started adding it. And something that I've learned is obviously anything you add, there'll always be fans and players who will go, hey, you should add this on top of it. You know, hey, you've got a bar. You should add the ability to get so drunk you fall asleep. You know, you should add the ability to punch the bartender.
Yeah.
They always want more stuff you can do in every area. And my dumbass, I was like, yeah, that's a great idea. So I kept doing it. And we got to the point where I added the throne room. I added maybe 100 different throne room encounters. And people were saying, hey, too many of them are repeating. It's too similar. We need more. So I added, I think we must be up to like maybe 600-700 different encounters. And then some of those have their own very randomization. So I think ultimately there's probably maybe like 5,000 variants. And it's still not enough. It still gets too samey for some people. We've had some players with like 4,000 hours, 5,000 hours, just crazy, crazy amounts. But I think the thing that blows my mind is, so when you start the game, you'll maybe have like 5-10 people waiting to see you in your throne room. And when you have a big kingdom, it could be 50, maybe 100 every year, right? And I saw a player whose empire was so big, they had 15,000 visitors waiting to be seen. And this crazy person saw them all. He was like, yeah, why not? So he spent like a day or 2 days in real life just waiting and listening to all of them. And you've got all sorts of stuff. Someone walks in and goes and walks off. You know, you got someone who walks in and is like, can I play you a song? No, leave. Someone else walks in. They called me a fat cow. Can you give me some money? You know, and you know, someone coming in. My lord, I come from the kingdom of butt chuggins, and I come bearing gifts. You know, and this person sat through 15,000 or 1,500 or something insane, just an unbelievable amount. And I told them, please don't do that again. That is a form of self-harm. You can hire a staff member like a steward who will deal with them all for you. Or you can, you know, only limit it to a certain amount of people or just a few, you know. But yeah, there's some crazy people out there. So I don't recommend that. I would consider it a form of torture to sit through 15,000 throne room encounters. But hey, you know, the kingdom doesn't rule itself. I respect it.
I think that's kind of the nice thing about these games is that they're kind of sandboxy and you can kind of play them the way you want to a bit. Like even when you start the game, you get a lot of options. Even for like the procedural generation, you can choose the difficulty. You can choose which factions you want to play with. You can choose your name and how people refer to you, which is always very fun. I think I went with something like your lordiness or something silly like that. These simple things that always give you joy. And then, you know, you get to that crowning ceremony and there are cute little details like they put your name on a scroll or something. It's like it's kind of a story generator in a way. So you're kind of, yeah, I mean story generator describes it pretty well, right? You get to role play being a king and the game generates a story with you.
Absolutely, yeah. And you get to define it by how you act. So obviously if you want to just get drunk and gamble on gnome fights, why not? You know? Maybe that's what I would do if I was a king, right? I think it was built out of the annoyance of some of those games where you're the king of this big kingdom, but all you can do is fight and upgrade. And it's like, well, that's not what kings do. Kings are assholes half the time, you know, most getting drunk or, you know, starting stupid wars or failing diplomacy or I don't know. Maybe you spend all of your money building a big tavern or something, you know, but I wanted to add as much of the indulgent things that a king would have or a queen or an empress or an emperor or whomever, you know, would have and whatever functions they have. And obviously that just got a bit out of control.
Yeah, what I find really fascinating about Warsim is just also how well it captures this feeling of being a king or a ruler, because you feel like you have so many different options and so many different ways to rule your kingdom. Like either you can do everything yourself, you can be that guy who sees like 1,000 people in your throne room and manages them all individually. You can study all of the different factions and try to learn their ins and outs so that you can properly negotiate with them and do diplomacy with them. But then I tried doing this, and then I also just realized, okay, no, this is too much work. It's like, no, I think diplomacy might not be for me. It's like too complex. I don't care about this. I think there are just so many different styles to play this, right?
A lot of that has come from obviously community members suggesting different ways to play, and I'm like, you know what, that is a really good idea. So it's fortunate, isn't it? Like that they suggest these things, and then later on, I'll be like, wow, that's actually really a good idea. Like it is playing really well, you know. or I'll see players play in a really horrible way, and I'm like, what are you doing? I would never play like that. But seeing how they play it, I'm like, yeah, wow, what the hell? Like I saw a guy speedrun my game once. He beat it in 2 minutes. He because there's like a demon faction that slowly builds up and takes over the world. You can disable it, but obviously, it's possible. And the first thing he did was destroyed the bank in the kingdom. And I was like, what? What? And he destroyed the bank, stole all their money, bought a map that shows you where the demon lands are, went straight there. And because it was super early in the game, they hadn't built that many demons yet. He killed them all, killed the big bad guy, and won the game in 2 minutes.
Oh.
And some players won't achieve that in like 50 hours, 100 hours. But this guy did it in 2 minutes. And I was just there like, what is he doing? Why did you destroy the bank? Oh, right, okay. And now I know, now I know.
So the entire game was kind of grown out of community feedback and just watching how the community plays the game and then basically supporting all of their various playstyles.
Absolutely. For better or worse. I think it worked out for us in the end, but it was a lot of work.
Either I read this somewhere or you told me yourself that like the initial draft for the game was all in one file of code. So the entire game in like one C++ file.
Well,
was that the case?
It's not the initial draft. It still is.
It still is.
I think we're 700,000 lines of code. You're a programmer, aren't you, as well? So You're probably... I can see the stress in your face.
Yes,
but I don't do that anymore. But for that game, man,
it's kind of, I guess what's so adorable about it is for people to know that you don't need to make games the right way. It doesn't really matter, right? If it works, it works.
Exactly. If it works, it works, right? Somehow it bloody works. I like to consider it in my head. It's like I built the Eiffel Tower, but just out of little bricks of turd, just like shit bricks. It's not built how it should be built, but somehow that is still the Eiffel Tower, like it's a ridiculous amount of code, but hey.
Is all of the game's content hard-coded into the game? Like all of the encounters and the dialogue, is that hard-coded into the code file, or do you have separate files with content?
So it's kind of hybrid. So originally it was all hard-coded, and then I think when I was adding a lot of the Proc-gen systems, a lot of the data for those was external. And after a while, I'd add like external dialogue systems and things like that. So like talking to some characters, their dialogues will be stored externally. I think there's probably like 50, maybe 100 external sets of data that are regularly used for like a Proc-gen or a certain group of people's dialogues and stuff like that. But everything else, all internal.
Okay. Yeah, crazy. What would you do differently if you would make another game like this? Let's say you make, maybe not Warsim 2, because I think instead of making Warsim 2, you'd probably just keep working on the existing one. But let's say you make like a similar game with a different theme. How would you go about it?
I think, I'd probably learn to program a lot better first and make sure I was doing things in a bit more of a smart way. And I think one of those things is building systems that can be modified quite easily so that you can obviously expand. Like now, when I add new systems to Warsim, they're built usually quite intelligently. And obviously I can come in and add and expand those really easily. But back in the day, these systems were pretty badly done. And if I needed to make some changes, it would be really difficult. And so sometimes I'd be like, there's no point. We'll just leave it as it is. So that would be one of them. And I think just mapping out the scope properly would help. But yeah, I mean, other than doing everything differently, I guess it would probably be very similar. Just try and make the structure a lot better. Just make sure the systems are a lot more intelligently done. And I think there were a few design things that were kind of flawed at the start, but I didn't really realize them at the time. And as the development went on, I was like, no. And so I had to do massive overhauls to the game to make those things work. And those were excruciating. Like I think the combat update took me 2 months to properly work on, just to overhaul a system slightly. It was insane. It was 2 months, 3 months, something like that. And then, for example, one of I mean, it's not necessarily a problem, but it's something that I would love to not have. And that's that in Warsim, you have 5 enemy kingdoms every time. And these are made up of any of the 94 million different races. And when you kill enough of them, you can spawn in a new set and discover a new bunch of lands. And one of the things that I wish I'd done back in the day is designed it to be dynamic. So it could be 1 kingdom, could be 50. But I didn't design it in that sense. And so I built hundreds of systems that were hard-coded to fit 5 kingdoms. So obviously now, if I wanted to go in and make it work with more than that, I would have to basically change probably 500 of the 700 lines of code or 700,000 lines of code. And that's just not possible. So yeah, it is what it is. It's fine. It still works. It's still perfect. But I would love that to be more dynamic, for example. And unfortunately, it's just not possible. And like, it's quite commonly requested by players too. So like, there are a few things like that I think if I'd thought about them smarter back then when I was doing the original design, and it wasn't just like, it's whatever, you know, and I'd structured it more intelligently, I might have thought to myself, okay, right, let's make this dynamic. But at the time, you know, I wasn't making a game even. I was just dicking around. So I guess those are the things I'd probably do differently. And then finally, and this is a big one that's bitten me quite a lot, that's language translation.
Yeah.
So Warsim, as you can imagine, again, it's all internally stored mostly. And I have had hundreds, maybe thousands of people from every country you can imagine. You probably get the same, right? Who say, hey, brother, let's have a Turkish version. Can you make it in Italian? Hey, can we get it in Deutsch? Can we get it in Portuguese, Brazilian? You know, and I have to say every time, thank you so much. I appreciate the offer, but I'm a dumbass and I design my game in a way that's not very receptive to that. So unfortunately, it's English only. And there are some players that still, for some reason, copy the page and put it into Google Translate and they play that way, which is insanity. But fair play, you know, whatever it takes. But for my future games, I will never make this mistake again. I will make sure it can be in every language because we live in a very global world. I mean, obviously, we're speaking in English, but it's not your native language, you know, and like, I'm sure you like to play games in your language too, you know, and you're not alone. You're the majority of the world don't want to play games in English. You know, that's just a fact. So there's a lot of markets out there that can be touched on by mindfully making versions that can be translated. So that is a big one. That is a massive one. And I think, you know, I'm making good money from Warsim, but I think I would be doing even better if the game was available in lots of different languages in different countries. It still sells in those countries, but very, very slim in comparison to how it probably would, you know, if it was in, say, Brazilian, Portuguese or something.
In terms of workflow, what would you do differently? Would you, for example, say, let's make only the core of the game and then once again just hand it to the community and see what they want? Or would you sort of plan it out, or what would your workflow look like?
Yeah, to be honest, the way I did it was probably not the wisest, but it was the most fun. Like, I would just wake up every day for most of these years and like, okay, there's a bug. I want to fix that, right? I need to get that fixed. But once that's done, right, okay, let's see if I can add a little hidden gnome village hidden in a tiny cave. And if you find it, they've got gambling, they've got all these different weird games. Why not? So I would just spend like 2 days adding that and doing gnome voices using a pitch shifter, like, or whatever, stupid stuff. And then that was so much fun. And then the next day, someone says, hey, why don't you add the ability to have pet monsters? Like, that's a fucking great idea. So then I'd spend 2 weeks making all this Proc-gen monster stuff. And like I said, it wasn't the smartest way of developing because it meant that I had a lot of open loose ends, but I had so much fun making stuff that I wanted to make. And I think ultimately that made a better game. So I honestly, if I was doing it again, I'd probably do it the same way. Just have fun with it. Just make stupid stuff. Listen to the community. It really felt like, although I was the only programmer, it really felt like I had 500 co-programmers, co-designers that were, you know, in a big room talking to me at all times of the day. I would have DMs, emails, messages, comments on 15 different forums, and I'd listen to all of them, like every single one of them. And the thing is, as well, you probably realize this too, right? People's like suggestions are very rarely unique. If you've got 10 people, 10 people will have different ideas. If you've got 1,000 people, you will hear the same ideas again and again and again because, you know, there's no original thought a lot of the time, right? And so if you listen to one person, you're listening to 10, you're listening to 50, 100, and new players will come and play the game later on and go, wow, they thought of this? That's crazy, you know? But it's like, you know, by considering those people. So it just works. I'll probably do the same with future games, to be honest, and just make sure that I'm listening to my community and trying to be mindful of those things. And I thought that most of the ideas they suggested would be stupid, but they weren't, honestly. It's mostly coming from people that care about the game, right? And want to play it and enjoy it already. So they know what they're talking about. It was like 99% of them were like really good ideas. And I'm like, damn, I'll make a list. And I've cleared 3,000 things from that list over the years. And there are still 2,500 things on that list.
Oh, wow.
And I don't even update it anymore. I've just given up. It's not going to happen. Like, it's not going to be done. But
yeah.
Honestly.
Okay, that's wild. Do you have some sort of system to keep track of loose ends, or what do you mean with loose ends exactly?
So, for example, like, I'm trying to think now. I can't remember what they are anymore because I've closed most of them, I would say. But like, there were systems in Warsim originally where it was like half built, you know, like when it was in early access. So I was like, okay, there was like a certain tournament in the arena, but the option didn't work, or you know, there's a guild somewhere, but the guild doesn't do anything, or you know. I'm trying to think of others. just a lot of like unfinished areas in this massive thing. And I would spend too much time going, ooh, this is cool. And I'd work on this instead of going and finishing this area over here. And I refused to release it from early access while those unfinished areas were open, which meant that we were in early access from 2017 until 2022, even though prior to that point, the game would have been considered completed to me. But after that point, I was like, nah, it's whatever. We're still going to keep working on it. So now there's no loose ends. There's no unfinished stuff, as far as I'm aware. But yeah, at the time, there was quite a lot of those. So I wanted to wrap those up. And so I think I would do a few here and there, but still spend a lot of time indulging and enjoying adding weird stuff.
I heard you say we a couple of times now, so maybe it would be nice to ask, did you expand the team at some point? I think you started solo, right? And then did you get help at some point, or how did that play out?
To be fair, yeah, I say we. I guess that's the royal we. Maybe the community. It's always been me with Warsim. So I have like mods for my Discord and like really good community members that I know I can rely on. And I have had people who've given me advice when I've had some issues with code and stuff. But yeah, it's a pure solo project. Always will be. Always has been. I guess I'm just using the royal we.
Okay, got it. And at least ChatGPT claimed you're working on a new game with some sort of studio now. So are you still making games, or what are your plans now?
Right. So as you can imagine, you work 10 years on an ASCII game solo and you start thinking, what's next?
Yep.
And I sure as hell could not make another ASCII game. Sorry to any Warsim fans out there. I love you, but I'm not doing that to myself anymore because I don't hate myself. So 10 years was enough on a project. I don't want to do another 10-year ASCII game. So like I don't really care about ASCII or text-based games. I wasn't making one because I like that genre. It was because I didn't know how to make anything else. And I used no engine. Warsim was written from scratch. So from like literally the first line to the last, it was all handwritten. And I learned a lot, but that's not what I want to make. I want to make 3D games. I want to make 2D games. I want to make, physical stuff that can be, on consoles and things like that. So maybe about 2 years ago, maybe 2.5 years ago, I started thinking seriously, okay, what are we going to do next? And I've worked on Warsim the whole time. Even now, I still work on it. I released an update yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, about 2 years ago, I began designing a new game, documenting it and making the plans for it. And then about 1.5 years ago, I founded a company, and then I hired a part-time programmer to work with me using the profits from Warsim. And we began working on it. And now we're so many years away, but we're developing it. And I'm hoping now that I've got staff and people that are working on it, obviously the stakes are very different.
Yep.
And now I need to make something that can come out at some point, and obviously make sure that we've got enough money to keep everyone being paid and stuff like that, which is a very different and very scary thing for someone who's obviously just been sat in their bedroom working on a game in their spare time. But yeah, no, I'm hopeful for it. A lot of lessons learned from Warsim. I would say it's a very different game, but it still contains a lot of Proc-gen, and I think a lot of the same energy of there being a lot of choice, a lot of weirdness. So I'm very, very excited to see where it goes, but also quite bloody nervous at the same time, to be honest.
Would you recommend making text-based games? Because when you described it, it sounded like you were essentially just following the fun and doing what's fun for you and what you liked. But now in hindsight, you're saying, no, I'm not doing that again. So is it just like that you've had enough of it, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's still fun. Don't get me wrong. Like I don't dislike it. And the time I had was fantastic. But after 10 years of making a game in a genre that's not really a genre I like for me, RPGs are like my favorite, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think I try to put a lot of RPG elements in Warsim to sort of scratch that itch on my head. But in reality, what I really want to make is an RPG game, like a Proc-gen weird RPG game. So now I'm finally able to do that. I'm like, oh, yes. But those 10 years with Warsim were still amazing, and getting a new feature to work and seeing it and go, oh, yeah, that's awesome. Or, getting the physical version or seeing a YouTuber play it, or getting just the weirdest Proc-gen stuff spat out of me. Like, I love it. And I would definitely recommend working on text-based games if you like it and if it's something that you want to, experiment with. And in fact, while I say that, I think there are 15 games at the moment that are inspired by Warsim that are being built, like text-based. And some of them are really, really cool and probably being made by people that are way smarter than me. So I'm excited to see those come out. And it's very humbling as well that there's so many of these like Warsim-inspired games going right now. So yeah, I definitely wouldn't disparage anyone working on a text-based game at all. I think it's awesome. But just for me, I'm definitely retired from that genre. That's all I'd say.
So do you think in which way is making text-based games like a smart idea from a business perspective? Have you thought about that?
Yeah, I guess from a business perspective, I don't know. I mean, it's something in my head tells me 2025 text-based games, that doesn't seem right. But, Warsim is working and fine in 2025 and selling. So it's like, it's hard to tell. If you made something really special, there's no reason why it couldn't work. Obviously, you have to market it really well. And I think a lot of people have told me that Warsim has proven to them that there is a market for text-based games in some capacity, right? It's just, you've got to build one, I guess, and you've got to find your people. But if I were to guess, I would imagine it is not the most profitable genre. Now, obviously, like, I wasn't doing it for profit. I wasn't thinking about things this strategically back then. But yeah, I imagine it wouldn't be the most profitable genre. No. I know that there's some that are not very profitable, like platformers. There's quite a lot of them, right? So unless you're building something really special, you're going to be drowning in a sea of other platformers, But I don't know, certain types of games, like open world games, can be quite popular. It really depends where you want to go. But I don't think it's maybe the smartest genre. But that being said, if you make something amazing and it catches people's attention, it can be any genre, really, can't it? As long as it's good. So, yeah.
I think...
but I guess I'd need to see the statistics.
I'm not sure if you know Chris Zukowski. He's like this indie game marketing guy. And I think one of his theories for Steam is that these crafty, buildy, simulation-y games just tend to do really well. And there are a couple of them, like RimWorld, for example, or Dwarf Fortress. And it's kind of typical for them that they oftentimes don't have the best graphics because they're so much more about deep simulations. Like they just create deep simulations, and they need an art style that allows them to make a lot of content fast so that they can have a really deep simulation. I would say, yeah, so your game kind of supports Chris' theory that just crafty simulation-y games just do well on Steam because they're sandboxy, they provide a lot of freedom. I'm not even sure why these kind of games work well on Steam, but yeah, I mean, maybe Chris has a point.
No, I mean,
yeah.
Yeah, you've got a lot of games that aren't very deep, though. You know what I mean? So, like, when you find games where there's such depth to what you can do in them, and it's more a reflection of how you want to play, rather than the game telling you play this way, you walk here, you press this. Instead, it's like, what do I do? Oh, this is crazy. I think players really enjoy that, so it makes total sense. And I mean, simulation is fun. Those sort of things. I mean, and Dwarf Fortress and RimWorld are some of the best games ever. I would say. Dwarf Fortress is insane. And obviously, it's not for everybody, but the level and depth of simulation is mind-boggling. And obviously, yeah, it could only be done with a basic sprite pack or an ASCII art overlay. We'd need some really serious computing to be able to make something that has that level of simulation with like realistic graphics. But yeah, I think people love gameplay, don't they? That's the long and short of it. Just as much as people like flashy games, people also love games that have gameplay that's deep and interesting and stuff. So it's good to see. It's encouraging.
So, but I guess one question that also arises from that is how the hell do you market a game like this? Because it's not like you post a screenshot and people are like, oh my God, this looks amazing, right? That's not how it works, probably.
No, God, no. I couldn't even make GIFs. There was all these GIF places, and I was like, shit, I can't make GIFs because it's just frozen screens. Fuck, what am I going to do? Realistically, mate, it's there's no one marketing tool or solution that I found is like the one. But what worked for me, especially back in the day when I was really, really hot on the marketing, was a tapestry of everything. So at first, I was like, right, I want to learn. So I Googled all the different search terms I could think of for video game marketing, and I made sure they weren't too far old because obviously it gets outdated. And I read the first 10 pages of Google results. I watched every video. I read every article, and I was making notes like, oh no, I've already heard that idea. Oh, that's an interesting one. And then you have a list and you think, you know what? I could do it this way. And you think of your own weird ways of doing stuff. And then I made forum posts on, I think, 30 different websites. And I was like, right, if I maintain these forum posts, okay, that's good. Let's have a look at Reddit now. Okay, so let's use a crawler. And we found 110 subreddits that could be something I could post on. So let's read the rules. Let's understand how it works, because every subreddit is different. And you post one place, you get banned in the next, even if you're doing the same thing. So you have to understand their rules. And then I would write, okay, let's regularly post in those subreddits. Let's try and get some popularity. Make my own subreddit, we'll cross-post, bring them over, start making some videos, and then we'll email YouTubers, right? So obviously that can be hit and miss. I found that the smaller YouTubers way more receptive, way more likely to play. So for a smaller game, getting in touch with little YouTubers, they're going to make videos because no one talks to them, right? So they're going to be like, oh, hell yeah, thank you. And they make a video. And then you've got lots of content on YouTube that's appearing and you can share it and stuff like that. And then a bigger YouTuber maybe covers it or sees it and stuff like that. Going on podcasts, like we're doing now. I mean, all of that costs nothing, you know? I'm trying to think. There was so many other ideas. But I ended up doing just thousands upon thousands of different actions and ideas. I wrote articles about the Proc-gen and shared that article around and tried to speak to journalists. I mean, last year I emailed, I think, 500 journalists.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, it's a lot of work.
Okay.
But it works. It works, you just got to put the work in. It is like a whole job in and of itself. And what I found, for example, one of the craziest things that ever happened for me as like a marketing thing, like it wasn't even meant to be marketing. I try all these different things and none of them worked. Or one of them worked a little bit. And then my friend was like, hey, you should post on Programming Humor, the subreddit, about how terrible your code is. And I was like, yeah, okay. So I was like, hey, Programming Humor, I see that you like large code bases. Because I saw a post with a code which was 50,000 lines of code and it was really upvoted. Everyone was like, this is crazy. I was like, you like big code? Check this one out. 700,000 lines of code. Oh, and it's a video game on Steam. And everyone was like, what? What the fuck? What game is this? And within 2 hours, it was the number one post on Reddit. And I made £20,000 in 2 hours. And then a Reddit admin deleted it. But just those 2 hours alone was insane to me. It was the single biggest moment my game had ever had. And it was because I made a joke post at my friend's request on a Programming Humor subreddit. And, I didn't think anything of it, but, it's little things like that. You never know. Just existing in public on the internet in a capacity with your game can draw attention to it, and it's, it's that simple. It's about getting people to come to your store in any capacity. And that, wasn't intentionally meant to be marketing, but anything can be, can't it, really? Anything that shows off what you're working on. And we have the privilege of our game stores being a digital space which can fit 1 million customers in. We're not limited to 5 people at a time. So your only job is just drawing in as many people to that link as possible and making sure that when they arrive, they are more likely to buy it than not, by making it look good and showing off as much good stuff as possible and obviously having a good price. And, it's a hell of a craft. It's a hell of an art form. But yeah, marketing is a big one. And I think a lot of game devs just want to program. They just want to code. They don't want to deal with that. And it's hard, and there's 1,000 people waiting to go, hey, give me a percentage of your game. I'll do your marketing. And they just do some tweets, but if you know how to do it yourself, or you can rely on someone who knows really what they're doing, that can be the reason your game survives. And I think if Warsim had no marketing, we wouldn't be talking right now. You would have never heard of it. And I would have probably sold 10 copies,
Got it. I'm always interested when guests give other advice than what I usually give. The advice I usually give is just make great games, and then there's a very, very short marketing checklist that you go through. You reach out to a couple of content creators, you make a demo, you participate in Steam Next Fest, and if your game is good enough, then your game will basically create enough momentum from those little sparks to carry itself. This is not what you're saying, and this might be a little bit maybe because you made a different kind of game. So what you're saying is you have all of these little things, and you did all of these little things, and some of them stick a little bit better, some of them stick a little bit worse, but you don't really know, so you just have to do a lot of different things.
Absolutely. I mean, I could see some things worked. So an article drew in I made £1,000 from that, or sold 100 copies. And, I'd do another thing I wouldn't see very much. So you can sort of see some things, but yeah, mostly it would just be chaos of let's try this, let's try that. And I've got hundreds of ideas I haven't done yet. I want to make a documentary about Warsim because there's so much weird stuff to talk about. And, that could be cool, So it's you never know. But I do agree with your point. If you make an amazing game that's not super, super niche, I would say, yeah, that should carry itself, especially if you manage to get it in enough people's hands to get it started.
Yeah.
But for me, I was making something really weird and it was tucked away there that nobody was looking. And so I just ran out and tried to get as much attention as possible over the years, and it worked. But obviously, as you know, there's no right or wrong way to do things, really.
Yeah.
If you're, working hard enough, I suppose it'll always come in some capacity. But I don't disagree with you.
And now word of mouth is carrying the game a little bit, because you said the word is spreading by itself a bit, sales are coming in, so it's a bit more on autopilot than it used to be, maybe?
Absolutely, yeah. So it's become a thing now. I've even applied for a few world records, so we'll see if that comes in. But at the moment, the game it carries itself. I don't know how much of this is algorithmic, how much of this is word of mouth, maybe a combination of both. Obviously, a decent amount of wish lists. But yeah, just it's doing okay. It's doing really good by itself, which I'm happy about. I'm very confused about it, but I'm happy about it. And I'm sure if I put a lot more effort into the marketing, I could stoke it up again, but I won't complain.
Besides the Reddit post, what were the biggest marketing hits you landed, or what did you see moved the needle the most?
Streamers. Big streamers playing the game was massive. There was one, he played it on like January the 1st, 2019 or something, and I looked and I'd made like £10,000 and I was just like, what is going on? This is the best new year ever. And then you get some YouTubers playing it, stuff like that, and I could see the big jump and be like, whoa, what? That's crazy. So yeah, big YouTubers, big streamers. I wrote an article once that sort of, I wouldn't say went viral, but it was like, it got a decent amount of reads and that made a lot of good stuff. I think it was mentioned on a podcast once and that sort of got it some more views. And other than that, yeah, some occasional successful Reddit posts, but that Programming Humor one being the biggest. And then, yeah, those were the predominantly biggest moments we ever had among the tapestry of, smaller ones. And then also for the summer sale and winter sale and stuff, I did some marketing things for that one of the years that made it very, very visible to people. And I think that did really well for me.
And then there's the thing, I guess, with the super fans. I assume you have a Discord community. And then, of course, because you're implementing so many community suggestions, I think it's also really cool and rewarding for those super fans and people who stick around to A, to see so many frequent updates, and B, to probably also see some of their own ideas implemented into the game.
Absolutely.
I would assume that
a lot of them are in the game.
Oh.
A lot of those people are themselves are characters, so they do love that.
Nice. Yeah, that sounds cool. And so what's your vision for the next game then?
You want to know the game, right? Yeah. Okay, so the next game, it's called Slumbox. The idea is that you've just turned 18. You're thrown in the deep end in a big, crusty, horrible city. Get a job. Good luck. And so you're in this world, and you have a little tiny apartment, a little box. You can go work in Slimeburger, pumping burgers. You can join a gang. You can run outside of the city, and outside of the city is a wasteland, like a post-apocalyptic almost wasteland. So if you go out there, it's a permadeath, crazy fight of who knows what will happen. And there's still danger in the city, but you can probably avoid it if you're smart enough. But in the wasteland, you're probably doomed. And we've got a lot of systems already. There's readable comic books. So we've got 90 of those at the moment. I've got a lot of in-game music. So I was planning on making like a GTA-style radio station, and it's gotten really out of control. So now we've got 244 songs at the moment currently that have been licensed to the game, mostly from the South Wales and Welsh music scene. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of really cool bands in my area, but it's a really small, tucked away part of the world. So a lot of these really great bands, they don't go anywhere. No one hears about them. And, we're not LA or London or something. So I've managed to get a lot of these bands to give me their music. And I'm hoping that if this game fucking pops off, the world will hear all these incredible bands. But I've also applied a lot of Proc-gen over their music. So you can find the tapes in the shop, but you might also kill an NPC and you pull out a tape and you're like, what is this? There's blood over it. It's super speed and it's choppy. So you listen to it, it's going, and it's going, and you're like, oh, this is fucking horrible. Fuck this. And then you're like, what was that tape though? And you go to the shop, you buy the real one, and it's a very different thing. And yeah, there's a lot of ideas. I think very similar to Warsim, it's going to be feature creep bonanza, but I'm hoping to try and keep the feature creep under control because I've got a team and I need to deliver, something that I can release. But my intention is to take it post-release and continue working on it and making it just even better and even stronger. But yeah, it's going to be a big kind of like if Stardew Valley and GTA had a baby and it did a bit of meth or something, like a bit of a crack baby.
Got it.
This is going to be a very strange game.
And this time it's going to be with some actual graphics. So is it 2D or is it 3D?
So it's 2D, like 2D, 2.5, something like that. It's sort of like you're looking at it from sort of above-ish, like above at an angle. And then, there's artwork. There's all sorts of different sprites and things like that. You can read the comics in the game like properly in these like full-blown readable comics. So yeah, proper graphics. No more ASCII. As much as I love ASCII, no more ASCII.
Are you using a game engine this time around, or are you going pure C++ again?
No pure anything anymore. No, I'm using, interesting enough, actually, I'm using GameMaker engine, which is not a usual choice, but I'm actually enjoying it. I never really thought about it, but I was making my decision at the same time as Unity did their bullshit role pug sort of drama or whatever. And I thought, you know what? Fuck that. I'm not going to use Unity then. And I had to look at the options, and I found a really good programmer who was working in GameMaker and thought, screw it, let's work together. Why not? And I learned the limitations and figured, you know what? I think I can actually do this in GameMaker. So we're working, we're seeing, and it's coming pretty well along, to be honest. I'm quite impressed with the engine, all things considered.
Yeah.
But yeah, it makes it a lot easier having an engine, that's for sure.
Yeah, I've also been working with GameMaker for a long time. Like, also one of my games is also made in GameMaker. Will You Snail is also a GameMaker game.
I didn't know that. That's crazy. I've heard of Will You Snail as well. I think I saw your videos years ago because see, the thing is with you, right? Your marketing is that you're a YouTube personality, right? So you have had good success online, and that as well brings you extra buffs to your games, which is fucking awesome. Very impressive. Because usually I find that you either are good at YouTube and bad at game development, or you're bad at game development but good at YouTube. So you see a lot of YouTubers who are giving advice, right? And they're like, oh, this is how you make great games. And they get like 100,000 views on every video, and then their games are shit. But I think you're one of the rare cases where it's not that. So fair play to you, mate. Fair play to you.
Yeah, I appreciate the warm words, but I think I've realized that YouTube is not as big of a marketing tool as I thought it was. Like, I'm not gonna deny that it gives some nice buffs. It does.
Yeah.
But like at the level of success that Thronefall reached, for example, my channel doesn't really move the needle at all anymore. But that's not because my channel isn't doing well. That's more so because Thronefall did so well that my own channel doesn't really put a dent in that.
Sounds like you're suffering from success there, my friend.
It's a horrible situation I'm encountering there.
You poor man. You poor man. I've actually played Thronefall. It's a fucking good game. That's why you're making that money. That's why it succeeded. Is because you made a good game, which lines up with your advice when you think about it.
So are you already planning for the next game to be like another 10-year project, or is it going to be a shorter project?
See, when you say it, in my head, I'm like, God, no, it can't be. But then when I think about what I'm actually planning, it realistically probably will be a 10-year project, maybe more. I think this is the thing. I really love games, and there's something about, like, you probably know this feeling too, right? When you play a video game and you're like, damn, I really wish I could do this, but you can't. So you just move on. But when it's your own game and you're like, damn, I really wish I could do this, well, you can release that DLC. You can make that happen, you know? You can release that tomorrow as a free update. So I think, like, in my head, I'm going to try and build another game that I really love. And if that happens, I am most definitely going to expand that to death and make it even purer, even bigger, even better. And I do intend, hopefully at that point, if it succeeds, to be able to have a bigger team and where we can hopefully split off and have the projects that build alongside it.
I see.
But yeah, I would imagine it's going to be another long haul hopefully for the better.
Have you set yourself up for like a game like this? Like, did you intentionally dial down the graphics a bit, for example, so that you can make stuff faster, or are you like, now it's just gonna be better this time?
Yeah, no, it's just gonna be better, I think. Yeah, I don't know. Well, it's like, I'm just happy to have graphics. I'm happy to be experimenting with visual things. And yeah, it's not obviously as fast to add content as it was for a text-based game, but it's actually not too bad, to be honest. GameMaker's pretty good. So, like, it's not difficult. And I think I'm just enjoying it. And obviously, one big thing I have now is other people working with me, which I never had before. So this is insane, and this changes the game quite a lot for better or worse. But one good thing is that I don't have to do every single thing ever, which is a superpower. You know, the ability to delegate and have, you know, we had a comic artist who's been working for us, you know, having a programmer build really cool systems while I'm adding little weird stuff. And yeah, I'm hoping to continue expanding. And if we can get a bigger budget, maybe some early access, a Kickstarter, who knows, that in the future we can expand that team and go even faster and, you know, be working even bigger on stronger stuff and things like that. But yeah, I'm definitely not scaling it down. I'm maybe biting off more than an indie studio should be able to chew, but we gotta try, mate. We gotta try and make something great.
But I mean, obviously having a team means that you have a bit of a burn rate now. So if you're lucky, maybe you can pay the existing team from Warsim. I hope that's the case, because that means you have a long breath. And if you're in a territory where you're starting to consume savings, that of course means that you are on a timer a little bit, right? And once you're on a timer, then the lower the timer gets, the more it means that you need to cut things that you wanted to put in there before releasing it at the release.
Absolutely, yeah. So that is the big struggle of obviously running an indie studio, which is what I'm now trying to do instead of just being a solo developer. And luckily, Warsim has made a lot of savings, a lot of money over the year. But obviously, what I've got now, it's not infinite.
Yep.
So I'm trying to be smart with it and use it as wisely as I can for now. I think to be fully open, I think we've probably spent about 16,000 so far, which isn't massive, all things considered. We're a year and a half into maybe 5-ish years, I reckon, before it's like properly ready. But I am looking to scale up and increase my costs by obviously having more people who will be on the payroll. So that will definitely change things quite a lot. From it being like a part-time programmer and a part-time artist to being like, oh no, these people are like full-time. And so what I'm hoping to do in the meantime is find investment or to blow Warsim up even more, get more attention on Warsim, and then use those proceeds to help build the game even more. And then at some point, Kickstarter, early access, and then from there, it's marketing, it's drawing more money in, it's doing what we can to then obviously make sure that the war chest can keep this development going as long as needs to be done. But you're absolutely right. It is something that needs to be taken seriously. And obviously, if you run out of money, it becomes a solo project again.
Okay. So it's a bit an adventure you put yourself in, but sounds quite fun for sure. How's your life like in general? Because from like the emails you send, I kind of get the feeling that game development is not the sole central point of your life.
Yeah, no, I'm a chaotic person, man. So I'm lucky that for the last 6-7 years I have been solely able to live off of game dev. So I've been working really hard on that. But yeah, a couple of years ago, I've always been doing stuff, but a couple of years ago I started a band with a friend of mine. So we've been touring around and it's been crazy. We've been doing all sorts of crazy shit with that, which has actually been really good for my new game because I now know a lot of bands who are willing to work with me, obviously, on this project. But every day is chaos, man. I wake up, I deal with whatever I got going on. We've got a new gig. We got to go sort something out. That's fine. Working on stuff for the game, interviewing people, developing new systems, licensing new music, so on and so forth, looking for investors. I flew out to San Francisco for GDC with my government, actually, with a bunch of the biggest industry leaders in my country, and that was insane.
Oh, nice.
And it was very, very chaotic. I got really, really drunk, and I missed all of my investor meetings. And
damn it.
I messaged them the next day. I was so sorry I missed the meeting. I was really drunk. Can we talk?
It was a great first impression.
And a lot of them were actually really good. A lot of them were like, yeah, why not? But yeah, no, it's chaos. I do what I want, basically. Yeah. So, I love music. I love video games. So I do that, I do a lot of that. And there's definitely more things that I want to do in the future. I love traveling. I love things like that. I'd love to somehow fuse this together. So this new game project is going to merge music and games for me because obviously I'm going to have a lot of music in the game. It's going to be very punk. But I also love traveling. And I think one thing that would be really beautiful would be finding a way to include other cultures in the way I develop my game. So, if I go to, I don't know, Portugal, learn more about Portuguese culture and some of their slang and some of their foods and things like that. And maybe implement those things into the game, and make it more of a worldly game. Who knows? Obviously, this is a lot of work, and now you see how the feature creep builds so easily. But
I see.
But yeah, there's never a dull moment. That's for sure. Never a dull moment.
When did you start identifying yourself as a game developer? Because you stumbled into this a little bit, right? You're like,
it's I don't remember, to be honest. I think for a while I had that imposter syndrome thing. So even though I was a game developer from the moment I released a game, I didn't feel like it, or from the moment I was developing a game, I didn't really feel like a proper game dev. I just felt like a hobbyist. But I think, when it was released on Steam, I started to feel really like, okay, now we're getting somewhere. And then, I think probably 2018, 2019, when it was becoming like a job. I'm a 100% a game developer at this point. I'm a solo game developer who's solely able to survive on the game dev income. That's game dev, baby. So from that point onwards, I think 100% I knew in my heart, I'm a game dev now. I've got my dream job. I just don't have my dream pay. And then years later, we got closer to it.
I see. So you're maybe game developer first and musician second, or how would you put it?
Yeah, I think game dev's the only way that I'm able to survive. So, the musician stuff is more like moonlighting at the moment.
I got it, okay.
Where, calling me a musician is maybe a stretch because I have a band full of people who are very talented guitarist, bassist, and drummer. and I just go up there shouting a bunch of stuff and diving into the crowd. I don't really do much actual music. But yeah, no, 100%. I'm definitely both a game developer and a a punk band frontman. But game dev is the true project, the true thing that is at the heart of what I do at the moment. And maybe it'll change, man. Who knows? But for now, that's definitely where it's at.
Got it. So you gotta lean a bit into what works, I guess, right? So if maybe the punk band starts doing really, really well, maybe then that mixes things up a bit. Yeah, I see.
Who knows? But I mean, I've got too much on my plate to move away from the game stuff at this point. So
got it.
I guess I'll just be there in the back room doing some programming before we run out and start stage diving.
I guess I wonder, from what you've learned, what would be your advice to other game developers, maybe to people who are starting out with making games, or maybe even people who have already been making games? Like, what's the perspective or advice you would like to provide?
It's a tough one, really. I guess the people who are starting out, depending on what you're doing, I mean, quite commonly it's programming, right? And I mean, we are, to be fair, in the age of things like Claude Code and Cursor and stuff, where you have like AI code now. And I think that can be a trap for some, because you shouldn't fall into that just being the only way that you code, right? But there are a lot more tools these days to rely on that can help you. Obviously, starting out now, you are playing the most difficulty level of development, and it gets easier and easier as you go along because you become smarter, right? You learn more. So today, if you are a new programmer and today is your first day making a line of code, that is the toughest it will ever be realistically, right? And 6 months later, it'll be kind of tough, but not as tough, and you're only going to get better. So if you can push through that, you'll be fine. And I think the big, tough barrier is persistence. And a lot of people, you have half-done projects, you give up, right? That's very common. It's not unusual, and no one should feel bad for that. And I felt that. I nearly abandoned Warsim 100 times. You've probably had the same with your projects, but persisting and continuing until you release something, it's admirable. And that's the thing you should seek, is being able to get to the point where you can just put something out there. That is a big barrier. And obviously, by the end of that, you're going to be way more talented, way more educated on what you need to do. So that's one bit of advice I would give. Another one would be not to make games you think other people would like, but instead make a game you would like. I mean, now the difficulty is you might like games with a very big scope. And as a first game, it probably wouldn't be wise to make a MMO RPG with 7,000 features and all this other stuff, maybe something more simple. So if there's a smaller scoped idea that you would like to make, that's always an advisable starting point. But it is possible to make something with a big scope. It's just you do open yourself up to strangling yourself with your own scope if you don't know what you're doing in the early days. But I would say making a game that you enjoy, you're more likely to make something that other people will enjoy than if you're making something you think other people might like, because that means that at least one person likes it, right? Whereas if you're making something you think someone else will like, at the moment, 0 people like it. And I think it's just less likely. And then obviously, it's not super easy to build a community, but when one does start to grow, which, if you keep posting and talking about it, people will appear and people will talk about your stuff. I think, listening to them and being present in that community as much as you can is obviously another massive thing that does help. Now, not everyone is very social. Not everyone wants to spend all their time talking to people online, and that's very, very fair. But yeah, even a little bit of acknowledgement for those people can go a long way. And that, for me, before I was making money, having comments from fans and messages and DMs, that was my fuel. That gave me so much passion to continue working for it, because I was like, man, these people care. And obviously later on money comes in, and that's also really good. And you're like, damn, this is working out now. But even to this day, like, it's been 10 years and I get a review that's really positive and I'm smiling, I'm like, man, I feel so humbled that I'm getting this right now. I try to reply to every review. Obviously for the bigger games, this is, this becomes impossible, but as you probably know, but but yeah, there's a lot of different things you can do. I mean, as long as you're having fun with it, I think it's a lot harder to go wrong if you're enjoying your process and you're making things that you love. So I think that's probably what I would advise. That, and, think about your project a lot more, design it as intelligently as you can and look at other people's mistakes. Think about what you want it to be and what needs to be done to make it that. So for example, making it translatable into other languages, that's a huge thing I didn't think of. Then it bit me in the ass later on, so it's like stuff like that. But yeah, I could probably talk for hours about it, but I think those are the main ones.
One thing I'm also very interested in is if you have any advice about procedural generation, because that's something I'm also quite interested in, and I think that's not as simple as it sounds. Like, it's. I wonder, do you have any learnings about procedural generation in general?
Yeah. So, I mean, the thing that I think makes better procedural generation systems, like making procedurally generated content, is not inherently really difficult. There are algorithms, there are things you can lean on that can do some of it. But I think one of the things I found makes the more crunchy, tasty Proc-gen is where you have this Proc-gen, but above it, you have a layer of your own, intelligent code that defines how the Proc-gen works. So, maybe, for example, you're making, I don't know, Proc-gen planets, right? So you might have something that just generates different colors, and that's cool. Maybe different mountains and stuff. Okay, cool. That's great. But at some point, it's going to look kind of samey.
Mm-hmm.
So you can add additional layers. Okay, well, what's the environment like? Okay, cool. We changed that. Who lives there? Okay, let's modify that, and stuff like that. And you can have certain Proc-gen that only unlocks for certain things, but even so, maybe not all the time. So it's, lots of different rule sets and changes and alternating code above the Proc-gen that means that it's not just raw data or raw chaos that comes out of Proc-gen, but instead weird intelligent systems that pull out from the Proc-gen or push it in a certain direction, means you can end up with a lot more dynamic stuff. And I think that is when it is at its best. That's when it's juicy and tasty. So I think, getting a Proc-gen system working is fantastic. But then, the functionality behind how it then is implemented, used, and what sort of elements of that Proc-gen you're leaning into is how you make a really good Proc-gen system.
Right.
And I've been guilty of making some really bad ones and also some really good ones. So I feel like that's the lesson I've learned from making, 50 plus Proc-gen systems is it's the ones with the rules, the ones with the complicated rules above them that are not Proc-gen, but just deciding it. Those ones are always coming up with really good stuff. Whereas the ones that are just like noise, there's chaos. It's like after a while, you just get used to it. It's just like, oh yeah, here it is again, just more nonsense.
So it's kind of like the naive approach, for example, for generating a world would be we have a bunch of tiles, like we have a tile-based world, and then for every individual tile, we decide if it's a tree, if it's just grassland, or if it's water. And then if you generate the world like that, then basically it will be randomized, but everything will just look like noise, right?
Exactly. It'll all look the same. Whereas you might have something that's like, right, okay, define regions of the world that will only have this type of thing. Maybe define a region that has a cluster of trees. That's great. And now you add a layer above that. Well, what about if this planet is like a weird, fucking strange, ghosty planet? Okay, well, now the trees are all weird, spiritual, wavy trees, and you can add lots of different effects to that, and stuff like that. That the more variation, then the more there is that the player doesn't know is happening, and they're like, "Whoa, what? I've never seen this before. What's this?" And if you can make a system that spits out more strange stuff like that, it can build into something that is very hard to feel familiar, which is the ultimate goal for Proc-gen. Is not for something that feels too, oh, I've seen this before, but something that you're always like, wow, this is weird, and those are the best ones.
So you kind of need some system that controls your generator, as you said, like a layer on top almost. That's like, yeah, but this planet doesn't have any trees or something like that.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Exactly. And obviously, the more complicated that is, the fucking juicier it becomes, in my opinion.
Got it. And then the other thing that I think we could maybe also get some advice from you is writing. What are your lessons from writing so much content for Warsim? Is there like specific type of content that people tend to like more, or where do you think the writing in Warsim shines the most?
I think the humor, the weirdness, the silly bits are definitely where it shines the most. So what I like to do is, like, it doesn't happen everywhere, but in a lot of places, there are a lot of alternate texts, right? So you never know what characters are going to say or, like, how they're going to react to stuff. And so I'd add a few boring ones, but adding a few really weird ones with their own weird effects. That's definitely stuff that's memorable for players, right? They're going to remember the strange, funny thing that made them go, what the hell? Like a farmer that shows up in your throne room and says, hey, one of your soldiers farted on my crops. I want compensation for my smelly wheat. Like, I have people laughing about that even now. I wrote that 10 years ago, but the one who's like, a farmer has come to complain that a soldier broke his fence. Like, they don't really care about that. So it's like a lot, the more personality, the more funny, weird stuff, stuff that's going to stick in someone's mind when they're reading thousands of bits of text in every game, or dialogues and whatever. It's the stranger, funnier, more personable stuff definitely does well. But, you have to have it in equal measure. You can't just have everything being crazy and off the wall. You have to, depending on what game you're making, obviously. So
yeah, the problem is if everything's crazy, then nothing's crazy, right? Because then it turns into almost that noise that we talked about. But if, like,
that's a good Good example of it, actually. Yeah. But no, I agree. It's contrast, right? So having by contrast some really interesting dialogues, and then obviously some more mundane and expected stuff. You give people a little surprise here and there, and I think those things do stick in mind.
Do you have any other things that you think would be interesting to talk about or pick my mind on or whatever?
God, yeah, no, I don't know. I mean, there's so many different weird, interesting little bits of game development. But what do you think I should learn from you? Because I mean, you're doing very well for yourself. You've made some good successes. What advice would you give me for my new studio, my new project, given your success with Thronefall, for example? Any insights you've got that you think I might?
I think it's difficult to say because our approaches are like very different from one another. I think, but I think from the theory crafting I have done so far, I would say you should probably lean into the crafty, buildy, simulation-y aspect as much as possible, right? And just basically keep doing what worked for you so far. So build lots of depth in procedural generation system and lots of wacky things for the community. And I think you just need to be careful that you foster an environment where that is possible. So be careful not to go too overboard with the graphics, I guess is what I'm saying. So that you can add stuff with reasonable effort. I think that would be very important if you want to keep doing what you're doing with graphics. Yeah,
that's good advice, mate. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Other than that, I don't know. It seems like what you're doing is working. So keep doing what you're doing, man.
Hell yeah, man. You and me both, mate. You and me both. Yeah. That's real, recognizing real right there.
I want to give you an opportunity to shout out your band at least. Like we have heard about your games. It's Warsim, and the other one. What was the other game again?
The other game's called Slumbox.
Slumbox, and
so there's no public announcement yet. Actually, it's not technically released. I don't care. I don't care about people knowing about it. But yeah, the band's called Dimparkio, which means no parking in Welsh.
Awesome.
And we mostly just play in dingy holes randomly all around the UK, and mostly it goes chaotically. It usually doesn't end in a fight with the crowd, but it has.
Okay.
It's always a good time. I have a bruised rib right now from a mosh pit from my a few gigs ago, so it's always a great time.
All right, I'll put some link in the descriptions for whoever wants to check it out.
Hell yeah, appreciate you, mate. Well, yeah, we'll have to stay in touch, mate. Genuinely, because it has been cool chatting to you, and obviously, we're both doing cool stuff in our own areas, man. I'm sure we're going to keep moving in those directions. Like, are you working on some new stuff now yourself?
Yeah, I mean, Paul and I are also like a two-man studio, more or less, right? And we'll be start developing a new game in like a month or two. We'll start the next project.
You excited for that?
Yes, very much so.
Hell yeah!
I think also we've learned a lot of new things and are excited to deploy our own new learnings from our projects and pick some new challenges. Like we want to make a online multiplayer game next.
Wow. Yeah, that is a challenge. Well, hey, I mean, if you've managed to do what you've done already, I think you'll be fine. So I'm excited to see what you cook, and I'm sure the millions of people that play your future games will be very happy you made them.
Let's hope so. I also obviously wish you the best for your game, and I hope to get some updates about how it's going occasionally.
Hell yeah, mate. Well, I'll send you a free copy when the game releases in like 5 or 10 years. Don't worry.
Nice.
You'd be like, what the fuck is this? Oh.
All right, I'll just stop the recording here real quick, and that is indeed where the recording stopped. I just want to point out, the podcast is also on all major streaming platforms now, so in case you're watching this on YouTube, you can also listen on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, pretty much all of the major platforms where you want to listen to podcasts. I hope you enjoyed. See you in the next one.